Hey everyone, welcome back to Home Buying 101. My name is Joseph and I'm here to help you master your knowledge of buying and selling homes to build more wealth through real estate. In today's video, we're covering how much home can you afford on a $100,000 annual salary. When it comes to buying your first home or a home in general is how much money can I afford to spend to buy this home? For most people, I think out in the world that haven't, gotten money from, trust or other places, the biggest factor is how much money they make every year, their salary, that determines exactly how much home they can afford. So if you're earning $100,000 per year, the question is, how much house can you afford on that much money? One of the biggest things I think people have to understand is there is no one size fits all mortgage for everybody. And if you can understand that, then you can move forward and understand that your particular situation may be different from everybody else's. The amount that you can afford to spend on a home will depend on a variety of factors. The main things that you're gonna be looking at is your credit score, the size of down payment that you wanna make, and your overall financial situation. Now, with that being said, there are a couple guidelines you can follow that will help you get a better understanding of exactly how much house you can afford on a $100,000 salary. And that rule states that you should spend no more than 28% of your annual income, your gross income, that's before taxes, on your housing expenses. And the 36 part comes in because you spend no more than 36% of that on all of your expenses, including any car loans, student loans, or any other type of loans that you may have. So what this equates to is about a $450,000 house on a 4% interest rate with a 30-year fixed loan. Now, before everybody freaks out in the comments, you can get an interest rate of about 3 to 3.5% using FHA. So this number is realistic, but you'll want to talk to a loan officer, obviously, for your particular situation. The other thing to consider is the 28-36 rule of thumb is just that. It's a rule of thumb. It is not a hard line rule. It's just a rule that you can follow if you want to keep yourself in a decent financial situation and not spend too much on a home. The other thing to consider is if you have a high credit score, 700 plus or up to 800, whatever that credit score is, that high credit score, you may actually be able to qualify for a lower interest rate. So the higher credit score, the better interest rate you're typically going to find. And vice versa, if you have a lower credit score, obviously your interest rate is going to be higher. So in most cases, whenever you want to go buy your house, you want to make sure you want to increase your credit score as high as possible so that you get the lowest interest rate possible. Another important factor to consider is the size of your down payment. Yes, in this case, size does matter. Now, generally speaking, the larger your down payment, the more home you're actually going to be able to afford. So a 20% down payment on a $450,000 house is roughly a $90,000 down payment that you'll have to save up for. While if you qualify for a 5% down payment, you'll actually be spending about $22,500 for a down payment. So if you were to look at it this way, if you're able to save up a larger down payment, you'll obviously be able to afford a more expensive house. Now, let me be clear, there are people who will qualify for a 3 to 3.5% down payment and still be able to afford a $450,000 house. So don't get in your mind that, oh, I got to save 20% down. That is a myth I think a lot of people follow and fall into and miss the opportunity of buying real estate. So even though we're talking about 20% right now or 5%, there are people, and this may be you, go out and talk to your lender because you might qualify for a 3.5% interest rate or even a 3% interest rate with an FHA loan. So the next important factor that you're going to want to consider is the actual location of the property. The median home price in a lot of locations is going to vary. So from state to state, from city to city, from zip code to zip code is going to vary greatly. So you have to keep that in mind whenever you're looking to buy your house. A $450,000 house in one market may be different than a $450,000 house in another market. Now, just because you can afford a $450,000 house or make the down payment on a $450,000 house, there are other things that you want to make sure you think about. That thing that I think is most important is the cost of living, because food may be more expensive, parking may be more expensive, taxes may be more expensive. So there's several different factors. Even though you can afford a $450,000 house, and we'll talk more about numbers in just a moment, make sure you're considering these things. Another thing that I think you should add to this is it's not just about the mortgage payment. You have your property taxes, you have your insurance, you have your HOA if you're going to buy a house in an HOA, and all these things need to be considered before buying a house. And I think a lot of real estate agents and real estate professionals forget to mention this to buyers is you're going to have these other costs that are factored in. The mortgage is just one of the things that has to be taken into account. So if it were me and I were coaching you to buy your first house and you can't afford a $450,000 house and a mortgage, then I would say, hey, make sure you put a budget together and look at that budget with your spouse or whoever you're buying this home with, or if it's by yourself. Really look at these numbers hard. Ask your real estate agent and your loan officer, hey, can you give me a general idea of what these costs typically are so I can budget that and make sure I'm comfortable every month making those payments. So if you haven't gathered enough, yes, if you make $100,000, you can probably afford roughly a $450,000 house, but there are so many factors and everybody's situation is so different. So even though you make $100,000 a year, your annual salary is $100,000, and you can afford a $450,000 house, there are so many small little things that you have to consider to make sure you're comfortable with that monthly payment. So I think the most important thing is you think about your budget. Don't let anybody else dictate your budget, because if you do, you can put yourself in a sticky situation that a lot of home buyers are in at right now in 2023. And if you're smart about the situation and you take into consideration everything that will fit into your budget whenever buying this home, I think you'll be able to make a smart decision for yourself as a home buyer. So in conclusion, I think if you take these things into account, using the 28-36 rule of thumb, that's like one of the safest things you can do. Take into account your particular budget, the location you're buying the house, your down payment, and obviously your $100,000 income. I think you'll be able to make a smart decision on a home that you want to purchase. And for those of you who stay to the end, I would use a required income calculator. It's going to tell you exactly how much house you can afford, and you can actually do it by different markets and taxes and put in interest rates and things like that. It's going to be super helpful. And if you found this video helpful, make sure you subscribe and click on one of these videos to learn more about real estate.